Joy. It's by no means a requirement though, so totally okay to have it off. My name is Mac Lindner. I'm the camp director at CYJ-Texas, and I'm very excited to welcome you guys to our Segel 2024 orientation. On the call, we're going to go over some logistics, we're going to go over some programs, some itinerary, which I think is really what we're all here for and want to see. And I'm very excited. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. There's definitely some time at the end of the call to come off mute and to do some Q&A. We love to have the live person conversation, but we'll be happy to answer anything as we go. So with that, I'd love to introduce Frank, our executive director, to just kind of tell us a little bit about Segel and kind of, what it means for CYJ.
Great. Thank you, Mac. First, good evening. Hope everyone had a good dinner, or if you're like us, you're having dinner afterwards. There's 73 Hanukkah campers going on Segel. 67 of them were in camp last year, so mostly returning. So most of you all know me, and for those that are new, hello, good to see you. And for those that are returning, good to see you again. Segel's kind of the highlight for the kids. They look forward to Segel. In fact, I hear all the WhatsApp groups are your Segel 24, 23, 22, 25, 28, Segel 30. So that's how people define themselves. Just to share, we last year we hired Joe Doc Weinstein Sears to run Segel. We've always outsourced the logistics, and we decided we wanted to run it ourselves. And so last year was the first year of running ourselves, and it went great. And there's some learning. There's some changes between first and second session. And this year, the itinerary is very similar to second session with some changes. And we made it more adventuresome. We added horseback riding last year, which was really neat. So it's an amazing trip. And I think part of what makes it neat is one, these kids, they've been in camp for a while, they're ready to get out, but it's also bonding together as a group, and it's seeing some of the most beautiful places. I mean, how many people here want to take an adult trip? I know Joe wants to lead one. So it's a great experience. And as we go through it today, we'll talk about some of the details, but as well, we'll go over housekeeping things about laundry, food, those kind of things, what to pack, all that. So hopefully at the end in this 1 hour period, everyone walks out a little more prepared and ready for their camper to go on Segel. I do want to mention security because that kind of goes under my realm. That what we're sharing with you, you'll notice we don't put anything online about the itinerary, but we will share with you, and we ask you not to share on social media. So even if you're proud that your kid is in White Sands, please don't share that on social media. We want where the kids are, we want to keep that confidential. With you, you'll know the itinerary, and if any changes happen in the itinerary, we will tell you, but not through social media. But you will know of all changes, okay? We also train the kids on what they can say to other people and our process and procedures. And part of this, from safety and security, at the end of this, we'll talk a little bit about the rules and stuff. And I want to, at that time, I'll chime in a little more. But at the end of the day, the most important thing for me is your kids come back to camp in the same or better, hopefully better condition than when they left. Maybe more tired, but really changed. And one of the unique things about the trip that's different than almost any other trip that a teenager will take is they won't have their phones. And if you think about that, they're going to be in the moment. They're going to have to communicate with people. They're going to have to notice the beautiful surroundings. And so it's really an interesting thing that they're doing that. So anyways, enough of me talking. Let me introduce one of the greatest people, Joe Doc Weinstein Sears. Has 4 names.
Thank you, Frank. All right. Hey, everybody. Good evening. It's great to see you. I am Joe Doc Weinstein Sears. It's my little camp nickname. But it's great to be with you tonight. In my day job, I think most of you know, I am head of upper school at the Emory Weiner School. I think some of you I saw last night at our incoming freshman pizza party. So it's nice to see you again. But I will be honest when I say that, the time I spend with Segel in the summer is really something that I look forward to all year. Outdoor education is a passion of mine. It's something that, I've believed in for, in over 20 years in education. I've seen the fruits of these kind of experiences for young people, and I'm just thrilled to get to be on Segel again this summer. We had a great summer last year, and we're going to build off that success and a few little changes, which I'll share with you. But for the most part, as Frank said, we're going to kind of be following the flow that we followed during second session. All right, so with that, I'm going to dive right in. So I'm going to start with a group picture because, this is what it's all about. It's about being together. It's about community. Here we are at sunrise in Palo Duro Canyon. This is our very first day together. We're going to drive all the way from camp up to West Texas, up to Palo Duro. It's an amazing experience, and it's the beginning of what is really an incredible 14 days where we are out in the great outdoors. We are spending time with each other. We're pushing ourselves. We're experiencing new things. And we're learning some things along the way. And we know that camp is not school, but there are some really cool learning moments that I think the campers who are on the call will appreciate this summer. So I want to share with you a little bit about our why, and I shared this back in the fall. So for those of you who were on that call, I don't want to be redundant, but I just want to reiterate some of our themes. When Frank asked me to take over this trip, I couldn't help but approach it as an educator and think about, okay, what are the themes? What are the learning goals for this trip? And so we summarize those in 4 C's, and here they are very briefly. The first is challenge. We know that Segel is all about leadership. And when you're a leader, you have to know how to respond to challenge. Being challenged yourself helps you grow as a leader. And we practice that, throughout the 14 days that we're on the road. But I think it's probably most especially emphasized during our climb up Guadalupe Peak, the highest peak in Texas at the end of the trip. And here we are celebrating at the top of that peak. And it's really incredible. The way that we approach challenge, right? The attitude that we approach challenge and how we help each other in those moments is really, really important. And we're going to talk a lot about that over the course of those 2 weeks together. Community is another important one. Being together. Here we are marking Havdalah in Zion National Park. This is not, I have not doctored this photo at all. It really does look like that. It's pretty amazing. But we have an amazing experience being together, and we get to know each other. And it's not always easy. When you're in community, sometimes you get on each other's nerves. Sometimes things aren't always as harmonious. But what's important is learning how to work together, even when we're a little stressed and we're hot and we're tired. How to stick together and have each other's backs. And so we're going to talk a lot about that over the course of the trip. The third C is conservation. This is an important added element from last year that we're going to continue this year. We want to think about our role in conserving the environment, protecting the environment. We're going to talk a lot about water. We're going to talk a lot about the resource of water in the desert, how important it is, its role in Jewish tradition. There's a lot of really interesting connections there, and what we can do, what part we can play in making sure that we're protecting this beautiful, beautiful planet that we're so lucky to live on. And this is us here at Lake Powell at Glen Canyon Dam, where we'll make a stop and we'll talk with some park rangers there. And then the fourth C is courage. I think everybody knows that being a leader means that you have to have courage sometimes. There are times where you feel nervous or anxious, or there are things that are a little scary, and you have to lean in. You have to have courage. Having courage doesn't mean you're not afraid. It just means that you press on, that you move forward, and you know who's around you, who's going to help you. And so we're going to talk a lot about that. I think for, the reason I put sort of the horseback riding picture, we're going to spend 3 hours in the Carson National Forest in the Moreno Valley in New Mexico outside of Angel Fire. for many of our campers, this is the first time they've ever been on horseback, and it can feel a little nerve-wracking. But it's an amazing experience, and it's just one of many experiences where we're going to practice leaning into courage. So those are our 4 C's. Those are going to begin before we even go on the trip, and then there's going to be things throughout the 2 weeks where we'll circle back to those thematic elements. Our staff, now this is a picture from last year, but I just want you to know that campers, parents, you're going to be well taken care of. It's not just me, so you'll be relieved to know you'll have an amazing Marquez. This year it's Benji Ross. He's incredible. He and I have met many, many times already this spring. And then we have a logistics team as well. And then, of course, we get to travel with the man, the myth, the legend, Tommy. And he's over there on the right-hand side. He has literally been doing the Segel trip from its inception. And so many, many years he's been driving the Segel bus. He knows every path, every road, every experience. And it's just such a pleasure to travel with him. He's a lot of fun. And so we'll get to spend some time with him on the bus and in between, at different locations. All right, so let's talk about our itinerary very briefly. You're going to get this in a follow-up email. I don't want to go into every single detail, but I just want you to know overall sort of what the trip is going to include. We're going to leave camp on a Sunday. We're going to drive all day to Palo Duro Canyon State Park. It's the largest canyon outside the Grand Canyon, and it's right here in Texas. Pretty cool. We're going to attend the Texas Outdoor Musical that is there in the canyon, talks about the history of Texas, the Native American experience, the history of the pioneers. It's a lot of fun, and it's in the open air as the sun goes down over the canyon. So it's pretty cool. Next day, we're going to drive to New Mexico. We're going to stop at the Blue Hole and swim in a 200-foot deep natural well inside the water table in the limestone. It's pretty incredible. Then we're going to drive to New Mexico. We'll be in the Moreno Valley. We'll do horseback riding in the Carson National Forest. We will watch the Angel Fire, where it gets its name, as the sun sets over the mountains. It's really incredible. And we're at that point, we're up, we've got some elevation. We're sort of up at 8,000 feet. The weather's going to change. It's going to be awesome. Get a break from the heat. It'd be nice. Then we're going to go the next day to Durango, Colorado. We're going to whitewater raft down the lower Animas. The water will have come from Silverton, Colorado. Only 24 hours before it will have been snow. So that water will be really cold, but it'll be a lot of fun. We'll have a great time. Then we're going to make a drive through Arizona, through native lands. We're going to note when we pass through native lands, in particular the Navajo Nation. We're going to stop at a couple of places and learn about that. And then we're going to make our way to Bryce National Canyon. We're going to hike some in the canyon. We're going to make our way to Zion National Park on Friday. We're going to hike up to the Emerald Pools. Then we're going to make our way to the place where we'll stay for Shabbat, Zion Ponderosa Ranch Resort. We got a couple of big houses. It's really cool. And we're going to be together. We're going to do Shabbat dinner in the house. We're going to play games. We're going to hang out. On Shabbat, there's going to be pool time, rock wall, mini golf, all kinds of things, Shabbat-friendly activities to kind of hang out. And we're going to have Havdalah under a beautiful Utah sunset. That second week, we're going to depart the ranch. We're going to head to Horseshoe Bend, which is an amazing place on the Colorado River as it feeds into the Grand Canyon, making our way to the Grand Canyon itself. When we get to the Grand Canyon, we're going to say Shechianu. There's going to be an amazing moment where we're going to take in the grandeur of that natural wonder. The next day, we're going to go to Sedona, Arizona, after having spent the night near the Grand Canyon. Last year, we had a elk herd that kind of moved through the camp. That was pretty cool. So hopefully we'll see those elk again. After we visit Sedona and the Red Rocks there, we're going to head to Alpine, Arizona, be up at another 10,000 feet, get some nice cool weather next to the Luna Lake where we'll camp out. The next day, we'll drive through New Mexico. We'll go to the Very Large Array. Now, your parents, campers, may have seen the movie Contact. We're going to watch it in the bus, don't worry, where all those big arrays are, Jodie Foster, and she's sort of listening to the heavens. We're going to actually see that. It's a super cool scientific observatory where scientists look at deep space, and we're going to learn about that in the middle of the New Mexican desert. We're going to make our way to White Sands, New Mexico, where we'll do sunset on the dunes. That was that first picture that we saw on the slide. So it's a Segel tradition. We spell out Segel on the sand dunes. It's pretty cool. And then the next day we get up and we cross over Cloudcroft over the mountains and we go to Carlsbad Caverns, where we'll go into what is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It's caverns that are 2 miles beneath. It's a mile actually. We hike down a mile, almost 2 miles at its lowest depth beneath the surface. We'll watch the bats leave the cave that night. It's pretty cool. And then the culminating experience. We hike Guadalupe Peak, which is 8,700 feet above sea level. It's Texas's highest peak. It's incredible. Last time we went, we actually saw a mountain lion. Don't worry, parents, it was at a safe distance. The mountain lion was nowhere near us, but we did see a mountain lion on our way up. It was an incredible and rare experience. And when we get to the top, we're going to blow the shofar. It's going to be pretty cool. And then we're going to drive through the night, and we'll be back to camp Friday morning on that final day. All right, food. I want you to know, in brief, we're going to feed you. Don't worry. Be a lot of food. We have a logistics team. We got a trailer. We're going to bring a lot of food with us. It's going to be kosher. We're going to prepare it ourselves. It's going to be fantastic. And here's what's cool. Campers, you're going to get to help us prepare food. One of my favorite memories from last summer is where we got up early and we made banana pancakes for the entire camp. You can see that picture there on the right. And I really didn't do much. I just supervised the ingredients and made sure everything was following, health and safety protocols. But otherwise, the campers prepared breakfast for everybody. And that was right before the elk kind of wandered through the camp. That was pretty cool. But you're gonna be well fed. Don't worry. Lots of snacks, 3 meals a day. It's gonna be all right. All right, packing list. Let's talk about this for a moment. Here are some of the most important things that you need to have if you don't have them already. Some good hiking shoes. Now, they don't have to be hiking boots per se. If you do go get hiking boots, make sure you wear them a little bit in advance of the trip. Don't bring them brand new on the trip. You might get some blisters. And we'll take care of you if you do. Don't worry. But if you've got some boots, try to break them in. Wear them around, on a walk in your neighborhood or wherever you're going to go to kind of break them in a little bit. Okay. A good sleeping bag is really important. You want to get one that can get down to 40 or 30 degrees if possible, because believe it or not, even in the summer, when we get up to some of these high elevations, it gets kind of cool, which is nice. We get to escape the Texas heat. And but you do want to have a sleeping bag that's warm enough. A good water bottle. We're going to stay hydrated. You're going to be required to bring a water bottle everywhere that you go. A good backpack, a good duffel bag, something that you can carry. You don't want to bring too much. It's good to pack light because if you bring too much, you're going to have to carry it around. So you want to pack light. We'll have some laundry along the way. We'll talk about that in a moment. And then a hat so that you got cover from the sun. Sunglasses, sunscreen, those kind of things. Okay. So those are the most important items that you'll need on the trip. Again, in a moment when we open up for Q&A, you can ask other questions, but those are the most important. And we'll include those in the materials that you receive tomorrow by email. All right. Some waivers. So tomorrow when you get an email from us, you're going to get some waivers. Parents that must be signed. Parents, you are the ones that have to sign these waivers. We've got some for horseback riding. We've got some related to whitewater rafting on the lower Animas, the ski lift that we take in Angel Fire, the rock wall and facilities at Zion Ponderosa Ranch Resort. So there will be some links in the message. And parents, please go and fill those out right away. I know we got a lot of things going on and we're busy, but if you don't fill those out, then it can kind of make things a little difficult when we get close to the experience and we're trying to scramble to get parents' signatures. So if you could just get those filled out, it will take you just a few minutes. Then we'll be good to go. And that way, when we arrive at the experiences, every camper can participate in those experiences. All right. Okay. And then our Segel Rules Agreement. For this, I'm going to turn it over to Mac and Frank to talk a little bit about expectations as it relates to how campers should conduct themselves while on Segel. Mac and Frank, all yours.
Okay, I'll jump in. I think very important when you see the rules, download them, go over them with your teenager. Actually do it. I asked the kids at camp, I'll say, how many of you actually signed the rules? Less than 50% said they signed them. And kids are very honest about that stuff. So let's raise that number up. Please go over it with the kids and tell them because if certain rules get broken, your child will get sent home. And the only way we could keep kids safe is they have to believe that we will follow through with everything we say we will do. And I can promise you that I will. Okay. It's very important. Safety, they're at a camp, they're not in the camp environment, they're on the road. So there's rules, what you would expect of drugs, alcohol, cigarettes, those kind of things, stealing, defacing property. But there's also things that are a little bit more less concrete, like doing anything that puts yourself or others in danger, like leaving your hotel room at night without telling a staff member, things like that. So we will go over the rules with the campers at camp, and we'll remind them again. But I need you to do the first part and talk to them. If you get sent home from Segel, here's what it will mean, because there's not a refund. It will mean that somehow they have to get home, so another flight. And what will it mean for them? So I think it's important as parents to have those very honest conversations, because they're on their way to adulthood and they have to understand consequences to actions. Because everyone comes in with good intentions. It's just sometimes they get caught up or they're not thinking. And so this is, start that process. Because at the end of the day, we want the kids to have a great time, but most importantly, we want them all to come back safely. And so the rules is one of the ways we do that. And there's lots of guidelines in our trips and the way we run things and do things. And that will also help keep them safe as well. From the supervision to we're in constant communication with Segel every day. So, it's really strict, but it's the right environment for them. That's
Well,
it on rules.
thank you, Frank. And again, we're gonna have a great trip. We don't want to have those difficult conversations, but it's really, really important that campers and parents understand those expectations. And it's really for safety and for the rest of the sort of the trip and the community on that trip, because we're close, we're tight, and we've got to be able to know that everyone's going to follow those expectations, so that we can carry out the awesome programming that just went through a moment ago. We got a few other housekeeping things, but before that, I wanted to just share this picture. I love this picture so much. So there's a really cool tradition when we arrive at the Grand Canyon. We some of our kids break out tefillin and not all rap, of course, but it is a sacred moment. I'll use that word. It's a sacred moment. I mentioned earlier we say the Shechianu when we get to the Grand Canyon. If you've ever been to the Grand Canyon, there's a reason for the hype, because it is truly breathtaking. It's one of those moments. It's like when you're when you're out stargazing, and we're going to do a little bit of that as well. When you look at the night sky and you just think about the millions upon millions of stars and galaxies, and you think about our place in the universe. The Grand Canyon is the same way. You feel very small, and I think that's one of its appeals, because it really helps us put things into perspective. All of us, myself included, all of us, we're necessarily self-centered in the sense that we experience the world through our own eyes. And so we can often get very focused on our own feelings and our own experience. But moments like when we stand on the edge here at Bright Angel Point, at the Grand Canyon, and you sort of take in the vastness, and you think about the time that it took for the Colorado River to cut this canyon out of the desert, it just helps us put things into perspective. And I think it prompts a kind of reflectiveness and spirituality. And so that's a part of the trip as well. The moments that we make and the sacred moments that we mark. All right. So we've got one more list here. And there we go. All right. Can we see the housekeeping list there? So we want to talk to you a little bit about some of these issues. We know these are questions that are common for parents. Mac or Frank, do you want to take these?
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in on a few of these. I just, I don't know if anyone else is feeling crazy excited about this trip, but I feel like every time we talk about this trip, it's just it truly is a once in a lifetime opportunity for these kids. So I'm really excited for them. Just a couple of our kind of FAQs here. I wanted to talk about communication. So, communication's a little bit different in camp and for Segel specifically. You'll still get most days you'll get the kind of micro post that we put on the companion app. We still try to upload photos pretty consistently. There are times that the trip is a little out of, cellular service or the photos aren't totally getting to us on time. And so I do ask a little grace if it's not, right up at, 1 o'clock or, right at that moment. We're hopefully working on it, but please feel free to email us, ask, let us know. We know you want to see pictures of where your kids are at and what they're doing and live a little vicariously through them. But just understand we do have some technical differences with Sego than we do when we're in camp. Um, Letters home, also similar. You should be getting a letter home the first week. You should be getting letters home on the third week when they're in camp. We have letter day, and they definitely have the time and space to write letters. But on the trip, the only time we really have an opportunity to send and receive mail is in the middle of the trip when they're at Zion Ponderosa Ranch, where we can send mail to. It's a 95% success rate, but the USPS or FedEx, UPS, sometimes things are delayed, and we have in the past, had shipments of mail be delayed and miss the trip. And so again, a little bit of less control on our part, and so we can't guarantee all these things, but we do everything we can to give the opportunity for you guys to write letters while your kids are on the trip, and for them to write letters home while they're on the trip as well. Last, just a couple words about laundry. So, just like every other year, the campers will have an opportunity to do laundry in camp before they go on the trip. So, I think that's on that Thursday. We'll give Segel specifically a laundry day so that they can wash everything and anything that they've already used. They can be fully stocked and ready to go on the trip. And then they'll also get a chance to do laundry when they're at Zion Ponderosa in the middle of the trip. Some of the places that we stay have laundry machines in them, and so they'll get an opportunity to do some laundry there. And then they'll do laundry again when they get back to camp. I think that's one of the first things we do is collect laundry from Segel and put it right into the wash. And so they'll finish camp with, again, kind of fully stocked closet, so to speak.
Awesome. Thank you, Mac. All right, folks, we are at the Q&A portion of the evening. So if you have any questions, if there are things that we've covered or we haven't covered that you have questions about, feel free to unmute yourself or to use the chat feature. And I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen so that I can see the chat feature there. All right, and then we'll just sort of take the questions as they come. So again, feel free to type them into the chat or to unmute yourself.
I have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
Um, as far as packing, do they bring like their regular amount of stuff to camp and then take like half of their stuff when they go to set for the adventure part so they don't have to schlep everything? Or how does the initial packing work? Because they're going to be there for 3.5 weeks, but obviously they don't need all the clothes for for the 2 weeks they'll be on the road, so to speak.
I'm happy to take that, Mac, unless you would rather do it. So yeah, so the answer is yes. Yeah, they can sort of pack regularly for camp, and then they can whittle down when we go on Segel. Again, we recommend packing light in general for camp. I would recommend that. But certainly for Segel, they're going to have to schlep whatever it is that they bring along with them. It's kind of a part of the responsibility. So the good news is, everybody's re-wearing clothes. Everybody is there's a smell that begins to be associated. It's okay. It's all good. But,
I'm sure.
but they'll be all right. So yeah, does that answer your question?
Yeah, that's perfect. That makes sense to
Yeah.
me. Thank you
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
much.
Yeah. Of course. Of course.
I have a question.
Yes.
We missed the beginning and we're completely new campers, never been on any camp and definitely never been to Camp CYJ before. So we missed the very beginning. So they're there for 4 days and then they go on the bus trip for how long? Is it
Yeah. So first of all, welcome to camp.
Thanks.
We're thrilled to have you. But then, so actually, they arrive. It's on a Sunday,
Right.
and they have that first full week, and so we don't leave actually until the following Sunday. So they get a full week
Oh,
and they get a Shabbat. I will, and then we'll sort of get ready for the trip in earnest on that Shabbat, and then we get up early that Sunday morning, and then we're gone for 2 weeks.
okay. So they come back on a Sunday, and then I think they come back to Dallas like on a Wednesday or something.
We arrive back on camp on a Friday, and then
Oh,
Mac
Friday.
help me when how many more days do they have for the end of the until the end of the session?
They'll have just a few days. They'll have Shabbat, our kind of last blowout Sunday, packing and banquet day Monday, and they'll go home on Tuesday.
Tuesday. Okay. And what do they do at camp compared to what they do on I saw the itinerary for the bus trip, but are they with the same people at camp, or what do they do at the camp? I mean, obviously it's his first year, so he didn't get to go all the other years. My daughter did go to Sabra a few years, so I'm kind of familiar. But what do they do at camp? Just regular camp stuff, I guess.
Yeah, mostly regular camp stuff. You know, they go to ropes course, they'll go to sports, Rikud, they'll have their hugim in the morning their electives that they'll get to choose. And then they have a couple of special programs that Segel specifically puts on for all of camp. And so they'll get some opportunity to kind of create some experiences and pass those on to the younger campers and kind of, start that, generational kind of, leadership experience.
And
Okay.
what's really cool is that again, Segel is all about leadership, right? And so what's really cool is that there are some moments where they get to lead at camp. And so while we're on the trip, actually, they're doing some preparation so that when we return, they actually get to lead that final Shabbat on camp. At camp, Segel gets to do that. And then they also have the Segel Carnival, which is a lot of fun. And I was actually on a call just the other day meeting with our educational folks to sort of talk about that. But they get to plan a big carnival and kind of a blowout, as Mac talked about, before camp is out. So there's a lot of fun things that they get to do. They also get to paint a mural. So before I got to do Segel, I was our arts director some years ago and got to work with Segel, for those of you who know, there's sort of a place where every Segel group gets to paint a mural on the side of a cabin, and it gets to stay there for like many years. It's pretty cool. So they get to design it, and then they go out and they paint it. So they'll start working on that in earnest as soon as they arrive at camp that very first day, and then they'll put some touch ups when we get back from the trip.
Awesome. Thanks.
Okay, I'm looking at the chat window. So the itinerary is going to go. There was somebody asking about another, sort of seeing what the programming was. We're going to send that out in abbreviated form in an email tomorrow. So don't worry, you're going to get to see that and look at it more closely. There's a question about how big are the groups. Looks like Mac answered that, which is great. We've got a question here about. Okay, great. Mac answered that one as well about duffels and bags. Thank you, Mac.
I'm catching up just as fast as you are.
Yeah, I'm just kind of going. It looks like Frank answered that one. That's great. It's a team effort here. Okay, let's see. In case of equipment loss or failure, are there contingency plans? I mean, the short answer is yes. I mean, we are very much we plan for a number of eventualities, different eventualities. And I will tell you, like, I mean, just to be very blunt, like if something happens, if there's a problem with one of our campsites or something, we're going to get a hotel. I mean, we're going to put Segel in a hotel. So we're not going to just rough it and sleep on the side of the street or something like that. So if something happens, we're gonna pivot, and we're gonna make sure your kids are safe. We're gonna make sure everybody's all right, and we'll do that. We shouldn't have any of those issues, but if we do, we will. And we're in constant communication with camp. I mean, as Mac and Frank know, we do go in and out of self-service, that's for sure. But I mean, I'm constantly on the phone or texting, giving them updates when we arrive at a place, when we leave a place, when we estimated time to arrival. So we stay in touch so that they know exactly where we are at any given time, and we'll pivot if needed.
Yeah, there's a question about just to clarify some of the communication and letter writing, so I'm happy to do that. So they'll have the opportunity to do the email to and from through the companion app while they're at camp. if you also want to print a couple early for them to take while they're on the trip, that's also a good opportunity for them to be able to write. In terms of having an address to send them the letter, go ahead and send it to camp. Send it, a little early. I would say probably Tuesday to Wednesday before the trip or before they arrive to Zion Ponderosa, before that second Shabbat, we try to send it out to Zion. And so anything that we receive at camp, we'll send in a big package directly to Zion. And then Joe and the team will do the same thing from Zion. All the letters that the campers write, they'll send in a package back to camp. And so there will be a little bit of a delay, but generally speaking, it has worked in the past.
And it's really special for campers to receive mail on that Shabbat. I love delivering that mail. And so, if you can think about it, I know we're all busy, but sort of plan in advance and as Max said, get that letter to us. It's really wonderful to deliver those letters, and they're excited to get those. It is. I will tell you, it's incredibly liberating. And for the campers who are on the call, you may be feeling a little nervous about being separated from your device, but I promise you, you're not going to regret it. And it just for so many reasons, it's wonderful. But it's great for them to be able to hear from their families. So I hope you'll take the time to send those letters.
Can I ask a follow up on the mail? I'm sorry.
Yeah, please.
Sure.
If I may, I apologize to interrupt. My question, I'm sorry to be so difficult about it. If we send an email or a regular snail mail ahead of that Ponderosa stop, you all will forward either of those. Is that correct?
Yeah, send it, 3 or 4 days in advance so that we can receive it. But we'll go ahead and forward it along to Zion Ponderosa.
That's right. Yeah. So if you send it with enough time, then they have enough time to put it in the mail and FedEx it to us so that it's there when we arrive. Ideally, that mail is sitting for us in the lobby when we arrive on that Friday at the end of that first week. So there's a question here about, will campers be left alone without staff or counselors at any time? The answer is no. So we're with them all the time.
Okay.
And if you don't mind, let's make sure we've all muted so that we don't get any feedback loops unless you're asking a question. So no, we don't leave them alone. They're with us. They're with us in the bus. When we set up camp, they're with us. They're with their counselors. Even on Shabbat, we've got counselors who are staying with them in the homes and aware of where they're going and what's happening. So it's our responsibility to be aware and to be present. And so we certainly are throughout the duration of the trip.
But I want to make sure it's known that in the tents, they most likely will not have a counselor in the tents with them.
Correct.
So the counselors will be in tents right near them, but will not be in their tents. So I just want to make sure everyone's aware of that.
Will they be able to take a?
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Albert.
Will they be able to take a camera since they can't take their phones?
Yes, they can definitely take cameras. They can definitely take cameras. They can either be just sort of an, old-fashioned, just sort of a disposable camera. They have those now in sort of digital format. And Mac, please correct me, but they can also bring a digital, as long as it doesn't have access to sort of social media. If it's a device that doesn't have cell service, but it has camera on it, they can bring that. Is that correct, Mac?
Cell service or Wi-Fi enabled. We ask to not be able to do either one because they'll be in places that they'll get Wi-Fi. They'll be in places they could pick up cell service, and it really does just adjust the trip in a way that we don't really want it to.
That's right. That's right. And we will be taking many, many, many pictures. The counselors will. I'll be taking pictures, and we'll be uploading all of those. So don't worry. Sometimes the kids get a little worried because they want to get pictures. We're going around with cameras constantly. And they're saying, "Oh, take a picture here," and we're taking hundreds of pictures of individuals and kids with other kids and groups and so on. So we'll be getting plenty of pictures.
Do we get those pictures? The pictures at the bus trip? Do we get those immediately, or do those take a while because you guys are on the trip?
So we'll do our best to upload them every day. So one of the emails that's coming, I think we're about 2 weeks out from it, or a week and a half or so, is our communication plan, and that explains a little bit more about when you can expect social media posts to go up, when ADA pictures will go up, when all camp photos will go up. But the short of it is, we try to post ADA photos every day by 11 or 12 o'clock, and so you should see those from the trip. Like I said before, there are times that sometimes the photos just don't upload, or the timeline breaks a little bit. Feel free to email us, let us know. If we know that's going to happen, we'll reach out and give you the expectation. But for the most part, every day you should see photos from the trip.
I want to lower their expectations a little bit because we will try and every time they move somewhere, as the trip goes on, we'll be communicating very quickly through the companion app, and we'll send a few pictures. But the bulk of the pictures is not always able to be done every day. Don't expect it, because the problem is people are working from their cell phones and there's just not enough bandwidth to do it. We're in camp, we have a fiber line and we can upload the pictures. So we can't do the same that we do in camp. And during camp time, when they're in camp, it's easy to do, but when they're on the trip, it is much harder. So I just want to be, very upfront that we'll do our best, but it's not going to be exactly the same. No one asked, but I'll throw it out there. How much spending money to bring? So about $150 to $200. But when we think about Segel, think about it as leadership and learning. And so one of the things, we're not going to hold their money. So when they come to camp, they're going to have a wallet, I assume, and they'll keep their own money. They are responsible for their own money. And so same way on the trip. And so if you give them a credit card, because that may be realistic, maybe you want to get a prepaid card that only has a certain amount on it. In other words, it's a great time to teach them budgeting, limits, and other things. So I would take this opportunity to really develop some of those skills, because in a few years they'll be in college and they'll need that. So really kind of talk about the money part and really set something up. So whether it's cash or credit card doesn't really matter so much. Spending money, we provide everything. The only thing they'll spend money on if they want their own snacks, but we provide snacks as well. If
Right.
they want their snacks, or they want to drink from here or there, or something, or gifts, shopping. But so anyways, I just want to throw that out to kind of think about that thought process.
I appreciate you saying that, Frank, because that's important to note that, we do provide everything. And there are a couple of times where those who, have a little spending money and want to go and get snacks or get a lunch. But please note, we do provide every meal along the way. I think the place where they get the most excited is probably Sedona in Arizona. We give them about an hour to go out, and it's right around lunchtime. Again, we provide lunch, but they're sort of excited to go, and so they go in small groups, and they'll sometimes get dessert, or they'll get a little lunch there. But thank you, Frank, for bringing that up.
Pleasure.
There's a question in the chat that asks, who the go-to person for, campers if they have a problem. And that's a little bit of a layered response, I think. It really depends on, what the challenge is, but we have a full staff. We'll have 6 to 8 counselors on the trip that, their job is to create those relationships with the campers. And they go through a whole week of training, and I'm very, very happy to say we have a high return rate. Almost every one of our counselors this summer is either coming from Israel or is a returning counselor or a CIT in a previous summer. And so they're really coming with a high skill set to create those relationships and to create those safe circles and places where people can confide in personal ways. And if there's bigger challenges, we also have our unit head, our Marquez Benji, who's a long seasoned camp guy. He's worked for many summers with us in many different capacities. And then we also have Joe on the trip, who, I think his credentials speak for himself, but also, I don't know if you guys have picked up the same, that I get from him, but he's just, a very wonderful and heartwarming guy. And so, if a camper has any challenge, I think our staff are incredibly well prepared, and if it gets bigger than that, we do have a set of professionals that we can reach out to if we ever need, a higher level of concern. And I'll also say if there is any big challenge on the trip, whether it be social, emotional, physical, any of those, we'll be in touch with the parents as well. We'll make sure that you're in the
Absolutely.
know, you're aware that you're partnering with us so that we're doing everything we can to make sure your kid is having, a great summer, feels safe, feels heard, feels understood, and is set up for success.
Absolutely. Well said, Mac. And just to add on to that, I agree with everything that's said. And we are in regular communication with camp counselors and with the camp EMAs. And so even last summer I was on the phone a few times to get advice to make sure that we were on the same page. So it is certainly it's a village, and we're making sure that we're working together for the sake of your kids. Uh,
Uh,
and let's see, it looks like Frank is answering questions in the chat, which is great.
there's a question
Let's see. Yeah, go ahead, Mac. Take that one.
finding out who the counselors are before the trip. So you will get a chance to find out who the counselors are on opening day. We'll send out counselor bios and share that information on just a little bit about who they are, where they're coming from, how long they've been in camp. But you'll hear much more about the counselors through your kids after the trip and really who they are. But you will get an opportunity if you're coming to camp on opening day to say hi and introduce yourself. And if you're not, then you'll get an email on opening day with some bios about the Marquez and the counselors on the trip as well.
Other questions? Don't be shy. Feel free to unmute yourself or drop it in the chat window.
There's a question in the camp window about the current climate that somebody put. I'd also like to hear about that.
That's funny. I actually said it's more nuanced. So it's not a one-liner because it's what exactly is happening. What happened? What is it? What does it mean? Anti-Semitic. What we do have is Joe on the trip. A strong person running the trip. We have logistics staff that are adults. We have our unit head counselor. So we have a lot of staff to help support and control, and they're in constant communication with us.
And
Go ahead, Joe. You want to jump in?
all I was going to say was, I think it's a legitimate question. I've got a student, I've got a son who is headed to college this next year. He's a senior. I know Frank does as well, and it's on my mind. I mean, as I'm watching what's happening on college campuses and in cities and so on, that's for sure. I want to just let the parents know, our bus does not have a giant Camp Young Judea with a giant Israeli flag on the side or anything like that. In fact, last summer, I think our bus had like Texas State University, wrapped on the side of the bus or something like that. So we're not, out loud sort of coming from a Jewish summer camp. When we're moving around, we're really not wearing a lot of, I mean, the kids are not, wearing a lot of things that would identify us as a Jewish group per se. And we're very cognizant, as Frank said, when we have those moments where, we're maybe having a sort of spiritual moment or we're talking about something that's sort of related to Jewish values, we're doing it in a thoughtful way. And it's something that I'm very cognizant of, sort of thinking about time and place and setting and all those kind of things. Not to be afraid. We're proudly Jewish and we want to be, but also just being smart about time and place and how we do that. So, and then as we said about sort of sharing our location, we don't do that until after the fact. And that's just a security consideration, not because we think there's any credible worry, but just we want to take precaution. And we don't want to sort of advertise where we're going to be at a certain time. Even when we set up camp, it's not like we set up camp and plop an Israeli flag or a big banner that we're Camp Young Judea. We don't do that. And I will say, for those of you who are outdoors people and you've camped and you've spent time, there are just some wonderful people out there who manage these sites. I always love it every summer when I get to spend time with some of these people. I can tell you without exaggeration, every single place that we stopped, and of course I let them, we're Camp Young Judea, Texas, and so on. I mean, welcoming, warm, glad to have us there without exception, without exception. And then every time we check into a place, I always make sure that I know whoever's the head of the facility and who's the head of sort of kind of keep an eye on security. I always exchange information when we arrive, just in case anything happens, so I know who to be in touch with. So hopefully those facts and those realities put your mind at ease. It is an unsettling time, that's for sure, but we're thoughtful about it.
And were something to happen, we would communicate with you all and let you
Right.
know what our response will be, how we will handle it, whether I have to send a resource or find resources there, or we're changing our itinerary or this or that. The part of the reason I probably never shared it with this group, part of the reason that we decided to run Segel in-house is a couple of years ago, the year before, it rained really hard and the tents were all wet and fell down. And there was no way the kids were going to go in there, but we hired a logistics company and they said, yeah, because they didn't want to pay out of pocket, it would have been their responsibility. And I said, no, the kids aren't going there. Take them to a hotel. We found them a hotel and we paid out of pocket. And then I knew that I always had to make sure we always did what's best for the kids. It didn't matter the cost. And so this is, what we'll do. We're going to always do what's best for the kids. And kind of to add into the part, we also, when we talk about security at camp this summer, when we take our kids out on trips, and it was really took a few minutes to really think it through. We're not having the kids wear camp shirts anymore. And we want our kids to be proud Jews, but also I've decided my point of view is that what I do with my own child, I can do. It's fine. But when I'm responsible for all these other children, I don't need to have a shirt with outwardly saying Israel or something to potentially cause something. So, that's kind of the line we're taking. But at the end of the day, we want our kids to be proud Jews, but we also want to keep the kids safe and do everything as best as we can. So hopefully that helps clarify a little bit as well.
Thank you, Frank. Any other questions? We got just a couple of minutes left. Feel free to drop them in the chat or to unmute yourself if you have any other questions or concerns.
And if we missed one in the chat, it was not on purpose. Feel free to put it back,
Yeah, we're
on there.
well said. I've been
Between the three of us, I
scrolling
think
back
we
to
got
see.
most of them, but
Sorry if I missed it, but how many nights are they in a hotel versus camping?
So we're not in a hotel any night except the Zion Ponderosa, which is not really a hotel. It's actually a big giant house. It's pretty cool. The kids love it. We camp out every single night. Which for me is, if I get to sleep out under the stars, that's my happy place. But when we get to Zion Ponderosa, we do Friday night and Saturday night in these big, and they're very, very nice. I mean, they are sort of they're pretty plush and cushy. They're nice, but we deserve it. We've been camping out, and the kids get in there. We always film them coming into the house, and they're just so excited, and they get to shower and relax. It's a nice place to rest for Shabbat. They get to all be in there. We have a girls' house and a boys' house with counselors in both homes. But yeah, no, we camp out every single night.
So. Okay, great. And then you mentioned,
and we spend one night on the bus, which is the final night. It's after we climb Guadalupe Peak, and then we come back and we have the talent show and a big dinner and everything. And then Tommy picks us up at 1 a.m. and we drive all the way to camp and we watch a movie in the bus. They love it. And, it's kind of like a sleepover. We're all in the bus. And, I do my best to stay awake. But it's a lot of fun. And then they all crash. And then well, I won't tell you what we do because there's some campers on the call. There's something special that happens in the morning, but I'm not going to say anything else about it. So it'll be a surprise.
Awesome. Thanks.
How many boys versus girls are there on the bus trip? Just approximately.
Mac, you have that information?
If you give me just 1 second, I can give you the breakdown. So in our first session, we have 10 boys and 16 girls. And in our second session, we have 26 boys and 21 girls.
Oh.
So it's a pretty good split on both of them, just slightly different numbers.
There was a question here. We bring all tents, and yeah, and then thank you, Frank. You answered that. Yeah, yeah. We bring tents. We bring extras, so they don't have to bring tents. It's much easier
We
that
don't
way. And
break the
actually,
tents.
they get experience and setting up those tents prior to going on the trip. They work with the Marquez and the Segel counselors to practice setting them up, which is just sort of part of the preparation.
Um, how do you know if you're in the first session or
I
second
think we're in the
session?
first one.
So that's just based off of when you register. And so the dates are if you're coming in the middle of June, you're in our first session. If you're coming in the middle of July, you're in our second session.
Yeah, thanks.
I wanted to share that tomorrow, Mac and I are headed towards camp. We're headed to camp, and we start preparing and starting the training process for the summer. So, if anything, this call has made me even more enthusiastic and excited to go. And I'm so appreciative of Joe leading the trip and just who he is and, running it. And I appreciate parents, all these great questions. And thank you for all these years you've been sending kids, paying tuition, and asking us questions and actually making us better. So thank you. And for me, the excitement is even after Segel when they come back as CIT and staff. And just to share a statistic that I'm really proud of, that this year 70% of our staff were in camp last summer. That's tremendous. And so that's very exciting. So anyways, we'll see you this summer.
Fantastic. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for being here tonight. And we look forward to seeing you this summer, being in contact, and campers. We'll see you in a few weeks.
Thank you guys. It was so great to see you.
Love it, everybody.
Thank you, Mike, and
Absolutely.
everybody.
Bye,
Nice to see you,
everyone.
Albert.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely.